Okay, I think we are live-ish. So welcome everybody to the Virtual Coffee Twitch channel. I think this is, well, I think I did it like a test stream a while ago, but this is our first real stream. Definitely our first stream with any kind of guests. So, a little patience and everything as we get everything settled, be appreciated. I am Dan, and I lost my little script here, so I found it. All right. Welcome to Virtual Coffee's Twitch channel. Virtual Coffee's mission is to be a welcoming tech community that allows for growth and mentorship at all levels, and to create meaningful opportunities for learning, leadership, and contribution for everyone. To find our code of conduct, events, subscribe to our podcast, newsletter, everything else that you could ever want, you can find us VirtualCoffee.io, which you can see right there on Todd's screen. Today we have with us Todd Libby. Todd is a web developer, designer, and accessibility advocate. He's been doing this for over 20 years, and he is currently an accessibility engineer at Webstaurant Store. It's actually, I guess, this is sort of a coincidence, but it's Todd Week at Virtual Coffee. We're doing this stream. We just released our podcast episode that we had Todd on. So you can find that at virtualcoffee.io/podcast. And on Friday, we have Todd joining us to talk about accessibility in general at our Lunch and Learn event. So I will post some links here in our chat momentarily. But Todd's been, a long-time member of Virtual Coffee, and it's always a good time to see him. So, hey, Todd, welcome, and thanks for coming on. How's it going?
Hi, Dan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. So Todd and I are working together for Hacktoberfest, and one of the things that we thought we could do is use some of Todd's expertise, accessibility expertise to improve the Virtual Coffee site. And I'll let Todd talk a little bit about what his process is, but one of the things that Todd does a lot is does sort of an accessibility audit. And so we already have a site, right? We've already created it. And so what we're going to do is try to use some different tools and techniques and go and see what we can improve for the Virtual Coffee site as a whole. Todd already did some work ahead of time, and so we can kind of start from there and then see what else we get. I will try to keep an eye on the chat, so feel free to drop any questions in there in the chat, and otherwise we'll kind of go from there. So yeah, Todd, why don't you run us through maybe a quick overview of your process here, and then where we've landed so far for this project.
Sure, thanks, Dan. So my process is pretty basic when I do an audit. The first thing I like to do with any site is hit the problems we see most on most sites these days, and it's been this way for a little while, and that's color contrast. So what I like to do is I like to use the Wave tool, the extension. Right now I'm in Firefox. There's extensions for Chrome and I believe Edge as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that up, and we got one error which I had looked at before, which really isn't an error. So this is a good time to mention false positives. So if we go down to where it is, and I know exactly where it is. It's right down here at the bottom with the sponsor button. So when you have a gradient, such as you do on this button, this doesn't count towards color contrast. A lot of people like to try to make it work. You can if you want. I don't do it for the reason, and I'll switch over here real quick, is this. And I hope I'm on the right one. So I have, it's probably not the right one. So let's try enhanced. No one has a gradient.
So the issue here is the tool is just not detecting the gradient, so it's picking some other color. Is that what?
Yeah, it's actually picking the color in the pixels right next to the S in sponsor. So let's actually go to the details tab here. So if anybody doesn't have the wave tool, I suggest it's a very good tool to use. So let's go back here. You have your errors, you have your alerts, and then references. You can click the little icon there with the eye in it. You can get over here to where the reference tab is. And then let's move this out of the way a little bit. And then you can go right over the contrast. So with this, it's using this color as the adjacent color, probably right up in here towards the top of the S. And it's barely, I mean, it barely passes AA, which is fine. And that's why I didn't, I didn't nick it, as a fail. It does, however, if the font size was smaller, it would fail AA, as you can see right there. So yeah, I wouldn't count that in an audit, just because of the gradient. And I believe that would fall under, I'm pretty sure that falls under enhanced, but I'm not quite sure. So there's something, that I need to look up.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question. And this is just part of the tooling, it's grabbing a pixel near the S. And so if the gradient, like and I feel like it probably is here, that orange is maybe a little lighter on the end, on the bottom right corner of the button.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So is the tool, maybe it won't pick up that, even if, so like if the S was really good, but the E was a low contrast situation, maybe the tool might not specifically pick that up since it's on a gradient. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, it's
Something to look
going
out for
to pick
anyway.
up. Yeah, it's going to pick up that color at the beginning. It doesn't, in my, for my knowledge anyways, it doesn't pick up the entire gradient from after that first letter to the right of the letter. So anything, let's pull up this. I have this tool. It's for Mac. It's called Pika. Let's go down here. Let's grab that. See, and you're right in there as far as the contrast goes. So that passes AA large, AA, AAA large. So, I mean, it doesn't pick up that gradient. Yeah.
Where do we get to, what's the difference between large and normal text? What's the like cutoff?
It's 18 point. So let's do this. Let's go to contrast min, because we'll go here. So anything 18-point text or 14-point bold is large enough to require the 3:1. Yeah. So
yeah, so these like color contrast, anybody that's done any of these automated tools, I feel like first time you run them, we'll see a ton of these color contrast, warnings and stuff like that, right? And so in your experience, it seems like, you got to like actually look at them, right? And don't treat them all as gospel, right? I mean,
right.
The automated tools can only go so far, right? So
yes.
They do some best guesses and give you some stuff to look at. But so after checking this out, at least the sponsor button, good enough, right? Passes AA.
Yes.
Maybe doesn't quite pass AAA.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you have the font here. And if I can highlight, let's see if I can, let's turn this off. Let's see if I can't highlight that, because I have a tool that will highlight that and give me all the info called Fontanello. So that's another good
Oh, that's neat.
font tool. So like right there, it gives you the contrast ratio and what it passes there too. So that's kind of my backup. But with that button, the text is large enough so that you don't have to worry about it. And
Yeah.
if somebody has a visual disability and they bump up the text like this, they're going to see it. So
Nice.
And I always, and kind of like to quickly go through this, I always test, I think it's 300 to 400 times magnification. So somebody's definitely going to see that. Contrast won't be an issue. So
yeah. Nice.
So next is I go right back up here, and let's turn that back on. We have some alerts here. So let's look at these alerts. These alerts are, and you click on the icon, it'll take you right there to the icon you click on. Let's move that out of the way. So you have a link that tells you, and I'm assuming that's, let's look at the code here. So another good part of the tool is you have the code right here. So let's do that. I'll bring it right there. So you have the alt text is Kirk Schillingford profile image. And then where's Kirk? Kirk, where'd you go? There you are right there. So why is this suspicious alt text? Because that link is interesting.
I love that it says suspicious. Yeah. So let me just ask you this pattern in general, okay. Right? So there's like, I think that the SVG we'll get to in a second, but for a situation where you want, you have a link and an image, right? And that's basically what you want your visual thing to be, right? At that point, what generally should we be looking at, for accessibility tooling, or not tooling, but accessibility like steps? So, we have a link and we have an image. We don't have any other text inside the link. In that situation, we have the alt text we can mess with. We have a title attribute on the link we can mess with. What should we be lining up here? Like what should be like the general standard, approach?
So with these are decorative. They do take you somewhere, but to me, they're decorative. An alt text should have a succinct, clear description of what the picture is. So that's definitely what alt text should be. As far as these to me, and I'll shut this off because you can see it a lot better. These to me are decorative, even though they go somewhere. Where do they go?
So they go to each user's, GitHub profile. So these are our sponsor. These are people who have sponsored us on GitHub. And I get what you said about decorative, but I think that my intention here, well, I'm not going to say I think, because I know that my intention here is for these not to be decorative, right? So them to be actually, sorry, excuse the siren outside, an actual list of like people who have sponsored us, and so therefore, like, I do want them to be in the document, I do want them to be read if somebody was doing a screen reader, and then so at that point, like we have the SVG in there with some text as well that has the name, right? So the breakdown of each one of these elements is there's the link, with a href to GitHub, there's the profile image, and then there's an SVG with the name in it in the SVG code. And so, like, what should I be telling a screen reader about this? I could see the image being decorative. Like the fact that there's an image isn't meaningful information, right? The person's name and the person's link are. to me,
Yeah.
so given all that, also, I don't want to be suspicious. So I don't, I don't know. I don't know if just making the images, hidden with empty alt text, something like that would be the right approach.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting little thing.
So telling the screen reader it's somebody's profile image is being redundant. They already will know it's going to be an image.
Okay.
So Kirk Shillingford profile, Kirk Shillingford GitHub page, or well, no, that would be wrong. Kirk Shillingford profile
So
on GitHub
that would be the alt text.
Yes, or you don't really want to put a link to either, or maybe you do actually. I would say you would put a link to Kirk Shillingford profile on GitHub.
Okay, nice. All right.
Yeah.
I wonder have we figured out what the suspicion is?
The suspicious is one being the image, the word image, and two,
Image of, yeah. Okay, I see.
you have the link, Kirk Shillingford profile image, but I'm not seeing that in the code anywhere. So that's kind of making me suspicious as well.
Well, I think the link, yeah, that's, excuse me. I was going to say that might be that's what it's reading as the text of the link, right? Is
correct.
Because the alt text of the thing, right? So yeah, so that makes sense. Okay, so that's that's a good list item to fix, right? Change the name of, change the alt text of these images to be more of a, like, if I can put it in a different word, we want the screen reader to read what you would, like, if we're going to remove the images and make this just a bullet list, like that's how the screen reader should read it, right?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. All right. What else? What else are we looking at?
So on this one, we have a skipped heading level. So what I'm going to do is I'll just show this really quick as when a screen reader user or user of assistive technology is, tabbing through the site, or they're using their assistive technology, there should be the hierarchy of heading levels that makes sense. And that is, it goes from the H1, H2, 3, 4, and so on. So what we have here in this instance is, and I'm going to use another tool real quick because it shows it a lot better. And that is the Headings Bookmarklet. So what we're going to see is you got your H1, which is the banner image here. H2. We're going to go down. Okay, we're getting more H2. We have the H3s here. More H3s, another one, and then H2. But now we're going from an H2 to an H4. So that's where the problem lies. So either this should be an H3 or there should be something in there.
Yeah.
But that is an H3, which more makes sense is either making this an H3 or because you have back to an H2 after this. So it's H2, H3, because you can do an H2 and H3 and then go back to the H2, and that's fine in the hierarchy.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I think even looking at this, I don't even know if that the Decentology one, even should be a header at all, because it's more of, I think that's being used more to style it, right? Than than an actual heading. It's like that's the section of our spot, like of our, I don't know, bigger spot, people who have supported us at a higher level. And so we could add a heading that is something we'd have to come up with a name for it. But inside there, that's really just a list, it's just a list item, right? So so yeah, it's like having this pointed out, it seems like maybe this should more just be not a heading at all, but just a link and, add some styling directly to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? There's like
That's an LI.
whole thing's an H4. Oh no. Okay. I see. We're getting weird markup coming from the tool. That's why I got confused there.
Gotcha. This I would, you can use a span.
Yeah. I could.
You could even use another H2. You could just style another H2 in that manner.
Yeah.
And it will be valid.
Yeah. Nice. No, I love like thinking about that document outline. So can you reframe real quick why? I mean, so I understand like keeping it in order, but like why does that? What makes the experience worse for a person if the document outline is all out of order?
It can be disorienting and confusing to somebody when heading level when you're reading, when a screen reader is reading back to somebody that uses a screen reader, it's heading level 2. And then so when it's reading heading level 2 and then going to heading level 4, they're left wondering, okay, did I miss a heading level 3 somewhere in the middle there, even though there's not so much space in between this.
Yeah. Nice.
Right here. So they're left wondering, where's that H3?
Okay. Nice. All right. That's another good little action item there. So we had a question really quick. This was based more about the links, but when a screen reader reads out a link, does it indicate what domain that link is going to, or should that be part of like the alt text or some sort of descriptive, helper?
There's a few different answers to this. So if it's coded correctly and accessibly, it will read the link. It will, and this is coming from somebody who doesn't use a screen reader, unless I'm doing an audit, of course. But it will read the link, but it shouldn't read the link. It should read the word, where it's going instead of the link itself.
Okay.
So I don't know if, let me try doing this here real quick.
Yes. Oh, nice. Well, I'm not sure if that'll come through. I'm not sure if you selected share sound. I think it'll probably only come through. Oh, well, I've never tried to share this. So.
All right. Yeah, let's turn that off for right now.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't hearing anything, so I don't think it's coming through on this end anyway. I'm sure we could, if we do this again, we can set it up to be able to do that. But yeah, so I mean, that's like, the reason, I mean, the fact that we don't know that off the top of our head is, an interesting thing. And I don't either. I don't know the answer. And the way to find out, of course, would be to do what you were just doing and try to figure it out. I'm sure we could probably Google it too, but in general, that sort of thing, that experience of consuming a site on a screen reader, I think is something that people should be doing more. Front-end developers at least should be doing more often, just to get a sense. I mean, they don't have to do it every day, all the time, but just to get a sense of what happens and what is, what doesn't make sense and what's confusing. I'm sure some things are just totally broken too. And so that's one of the things that those tools are trying to help, automated tools, but
use tools that, if you're doing an accessibility audit. So someone, for instance, is like, okay, I want to make sure my site's accessible. Use a screen reader. I wouldn't use, and this was kind of not an ideal example, but VoiceOver works best in Safari. I mean, that's, Mac technology for you. But when you know, and voiceover there, it does have its problems as well. So, I mean, if you have, it's a site that I'll pull up here real quick. There it is right there. You can sign up for this. Basically what it does, it gives you all these screen readers at the, you know, at your fingertips that you can use and test with virtually. JAWS, NVDA, VoiceOver. If you use Linux, I don't think it has Orca, but Orca is a screen reader for Linux. But yeah, use VoiceOver. NVDA is free. So if anybody's using Windows out there, you can download that and use that. The ones I use most from here, just as a sidebar, is VoiceOver and Zoom. The contrast, I try to do a little bit. The invert colors really doesn't work that well for me when I'm doing a test, but I will take a peek at it. But those are basically the ones I best know. Then there, of course, is some other ones if anybody wants to use those. But
yeah, and real quick, I just wanted to shout out how to get that that in your menu bar. It's in the Mac settings. So if you go to settings and this is just on Mac, but settings and then accessibility, and then you got to scroll all the way down, and there's a shortcut. Yeah, that shortcut is what we're looking at. Or well, I suppose that show accessibility status bar and the menu bars everywhere. And then the shortcut is how you can choose what shows up in that menu. And then also there's that shortcut, quickly press touch ID 3 times, which I've never tried before, but or didn't even know existed. But this is a cool way to, like, if you want to, if you're doing some stuff, or if you're just like in a zone where you're doing some work on this, it can be a nice little shortcut to have in your toolbar while working. And you don't have to install anything. It's just part of the Mac OS. So pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. And there's actually, and I will get you the link to that to share. It's probably somewhere in the Slack group where there's a PDF of some commands that DQ Systems has available that I can get for you for VoiceOver and NVDA.
Nice. Yeah, and just as a quick note, I posted a link to the show notes for the podcast episode that we just released. But you mentioned a lot of these tools in there, and we have links to all everything that you mentioned in the podcast episode. So I posted the link in the chat, and so if anybody wants direct links to a lot of this stuff, we have links right there. All right. So what else is going on do we have anything else in the Wave tool for the homepage? Or did we get through that list? I can't remember.
There we go. Reset the page and let's go back to Wave. Let's see. We have possible headings. See, this is one of those ones that, it's possibly a heading. What do you mean by that, Wave? I don't know, but this could be a possible heading. This could be a possible heading. I look at them briefly and say, okay, these aren't headings. I mean, they could be, but they're not.
So what is one of those? Are they just in a div or something? Like what? No, I'm just curious about what that even means.
Yeah, let's take a look at that. See our upcoming events. So, okay, that could be a heading.
Right? Oh, so are they maybe just like, because that's like the lead text sort of, so like it's a little bigger than the body copy. Maybe that's what it's like a short paragraph with a little bigger font size, and so they're like, maybe this should be a heading. That's interesting.
Yeah. They're thinking, oh, this could be an H4, so and then something like, let's see what we got down here.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. It's just like
that. I mean,
a paragraph with like not much text in it, I suppose.
Right. Yeah. So basically it's that kind of a thing is up to the person, who's coding it,
Yeah.
saying, okay, is this worthy of being a heading?
Yeah.
I mean, these possibly, this, I don't, I wouldn't nick that as a issue.
Yeah.
If I was doing
sorry to interrupt, but that
No.
like, so that virtual coffee newsletter, sign up for the virtual coffee newsletter, right? So this is like a pretty common design style, right? Where you have like a heading and basically a subheading, I mean, that's what it is in my head. And so in those cases, do you suggest those to be headings? Like, should the sign up for the virtual coffee newsletter, should that be an H4 in this, like specifically in this, case, do you think? Like, would you set that as an H4, or would you leave it as like a paragraph that's styled that way?
I would put that as an H4. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. I go back and forth in my own head about that all the time, because it's like, you have it everywhere. It's like a heading and a subheading, and no, that's good to know. I'm writing that down too. I got a list of changes we're getting here. So
now,
yeah, go ahead.
Just to touch on this a little bit. So we have this one, which is exactly the same kind of styling as the one up here, right? But we have a lot of text. This one, and this is where, when you said you go back and forth in your head about it, this is one I wouldn't put as a heading level 4, because there's a lot of text. And sometimes when you have a lot of text and somebody codes it as a heading level, whatever, you'll get a result back, too much text in the heading level. So I wonder if
That's interesting.
that, because
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I've come upon cases where it's been, something like, something that long has been a heading level, and it's like, that's way too long.
Right.
that should be a paragraph. Something like this, that's kind of borderline, but I personally wouldn't. So I can see where, do I do it for this? If I do it for that, then I should do it for this.
Right.
It's kind of, what do you want to do with it? Where do you think, what do you think the best case for it is? So
yeah. The answer is always it depends.
Yeah, it's one of those things with the WCAG guidelines where it's got that loophole, it's got that gray area, and there's a lot of gray area in the WCAG guidelines. So does it fall under that category, or does it? So
right.
I don't know if we'll ever know until 3 comes out. to be honest with you.
Well, now that you mentioned that, we have you on here. So when is 3 coming out? No, just kidding.
It won't be for a while.
Yeah, I know you guys are working on it.
Yeah, I've heard 3 to 5 years. So
yeah.
It's still a lot of work's being done, but yeah, still a long ways down the road.
All right, let's keep working through the wave tool here. So we have a redundant
link. So this one is always,
scroll back up again a little bit.
So you have this link,
right?
And then you have that link. That's going to cause confusion with the screen reader user. Okay.
Yeah. So my gut makes me want to just like wrap the image one in a ARIA hidden. Do you think that would be, because it's the same? I mean, it's just the logo, right? I mean, we want the logo. We want the logo to be linked for sighted users and, whatever, people with using pointer tools, but like, it's not actually, especially since the link is in the title, right? We don't need both for a screen reader, right?
Correct. Yeah. You're better off keeping this as a heading without a link and just being an H4. Or no, better yet, that was the skipped heading. So maybe an H3, unlinked, and just regular text. And then this is your linked. Your link to the sponsor.
Okay. And what if our designer came back and said, we want both of those things to link?
One or the other.
So yeah, I mean, like, so like I was getting at, so can we just like, would an alternative path be hiding the image and the logo from screen reading technology? And would that sort of reduce the confusion without hiding content from them, from a person using that technology, because that's like, it's just a logo. It's not like we're talking about the logo or anything like that, right? It is redundant information,
You can put an ARIA hidden on that, yes.
So if you saw that while you were doing an audit, would that jump out at you as like bad, or would that jump out at you as like, oh, this is kind of a silly decision that somebody made,
I mean, you can go either way, to be honest. And I mean, I've probably done it both ways.
Yeah.
So I guess, hindsight being 2020. Either way, it does make more sense just saying, okay, we're going to put an ARIA hidden on the logo and we'll hide that from the screen reader.
Yeah. I mean, the more I stare at this, the more I wish it was just like, no heading at all, and just the big logo and the description paragraph. But there's always like, I mostly just wanted to illustrate there's always different ways to sort of approach that. So right as it stands right now, if somebody was working through this in a screen reader, they would get like, oh, link to Decentology, then the text Decentology logo or image with all text, and then link to Decentology again, right in 2 in a row. So that would just be basically just wasting their time.
Right. Yeah, and you may even get the URL as well. So that's goes
Right.
along with the question that we had, is you may even get that URL being read out with that logo. Yeah. And
nice.
just to point this out, as you can see here, if anybody uses this is a great way to look up. It goes right to WebAIM. You can look up the guideline right here. Gives you a quick little overview. And that one goes right to the guidelines as well, the WCAG guidelines on W3C. So, just wanted to point that out.
Nice. Yeah, this tool has a lot of cool links to why, so lots of times if you get an alert, sometimes they don't make a lot of sense, but the Wave tool specifically at least has, always has a lot of links to both so this content here, what it means, why it matters, that stuff, the Wave tool created that content, but then they have links to the actual references too. So if you want to dig in deeper, they have the links to it. It's really cool.
Yeah. And then you have, your structure right here that you can look at as well. So that's in my tooling, that's the forgotten tab, because I barely look at that, because, I have some other stuff that I can use that does pretty much the same thing. So, but yeah.
All right. Do we have any other things we want to hit on the Wave tool, or
I mean, you've got all the stuff that's good with the site here. But as for the Wave tool, unless anybody's got any questions, we can move on to the next tool.
I think we're good. Yeah. I mean, if anybody thinks of any questions, obviously just drop them in the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on it. But yeah, let's move on to whatever you have next.
So the next one is pretty important. So very important, as a matter of fact. And this goes, so you don't have a skip link, correct?
I don't think so. It's possible. So why don't you sort of tell us what that means?
So when a screen reader user, assistive technology user just wants to go to the content, so say this is the content right here, a skip link, of course, everybody hopefully knows, will just bring you right down to that div. So let's say it's main for argument's sake. And they have the content right here, right in front of them, and they can skip whatever, if it's some hero image with, video or whatever, or just an image, or what's even worse, a carousel. They can skip that content and go right down there. So that is actually a bypass block. So if we go here, let's go back because I want to make sure that. So what a bypass block is it's a mechanism, as it says here, available to bypass blocks of content that are repeated on multiple web pages. Basically a skip link up here. Sometimes you normally see them up in the upper left. So what I do is, leading to my next tool, which is the keyboard. I'm going to tab through, and here's another issue. I don't see focus indicators until.
I mean, who made this website? Gosh, it was me.
I don't see there. You can
the
barely
text links
see
have
that.
it. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Now, it's good that you got them in there. I've seen so many cases of, for instance, WordPress themes that they strip out the outline or border equals 0 or border :0.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or they use a star hack. They put that in the star hack, or they use a CSS reset, but they don't look at, okay, it takes out the outline, but you have to put that back in.
You have to add it back in. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
This is obviously a problem for people with low vision, or that don't rely on visual cues to navigate the site, to know where they are.
Mm-hmm. And people that can't or don't use a mouse, like a pointer tool as well, right?
Yes.
I mean, if you like, the fact that they're hard to see is bad, but I mean, if they're just gone, then it's impossible to use this with a keyboard, which is rough.
Yes,
that's a big one.
So I did an audit on a site a couple months ago, and it did not have any, and it wasn't even a WordPress site. It did not have any focus outline or focus indicators at all. And like you said, people that use other assistive technology, they don't use a mouse, they use some sort of, device. They need to know where they are on the page. So that is, I'm going to find that focus visible. So 247 in the keyboard operable user interface has a mode of operation where the keyboard focus indicator is visible. So there's a couple of fails right there, bypass block and focus visible. I do also want to say, when doing an audit, don't rely heavily on the guidelines as your, it's set in stone. This is why it's not accessible, because there may be other things outside the scope of the WCAG guidelines that makes it inaccessible as well. So it's not just, accessibility is not just the guidelines. it's also
Sure.
about the design. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and the wave tool didn't pick either of those up, right? And those are
Right.
both like pretty big problems, at least in my mind.
Mhm.
So no, that's a good point. Are there other well, if you have, I mean, you can move on if you know where you're going.
Well, there's so these bookmarklets that I have here. So Paul J. Adam, and I don't remember if we talked about this in the podcast, but Paul J. Adam has bookmarklets on that he has available, and Ian Lloyd has bookmarklets as well. They are great tools to have. So I want to come down here. I'm going to use this one. This one's going to show it to me really good here. So let's go. And that's gonna, okay, so we see the outlines for these right here.
So this is basically just adding a focus style
Yes.
onto the site,
Yes.
since it was missing one to begin with.
Yeah, and it's showing me what's focusable. And also at the same time, you want to look at how the focus flows on the site as well. And that's going to be under focus order. So
yeah.
So we're going to go down here. Just going to go through this real quick.
And with a 2-column layout like this, do you think this focus order seems rational? At least
Yes.
like for this layout? Yeah, I mean, like, kind of goes through a section and then jumps over to the other section, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Just wanted to, and this is a problem, just as you're tabbing through, as this is one of the areas where you can get into some trouble with some of the newer CSS layout tools, like Flexbox, and especially Grid, things where you can change the order of the visually of elements in CSS, can really confuse people that are using keyboards for navigation. So if we had a more complicated layout and I was messing with the order, so if you I don't know, Todd, there's no good example, but if you scroll back up to those columns or something, if we had, like, if I, our CSS right now is basically just saying, like, okay, stack them to the left, it's, too wide when we're at the wide breakpoint. But, I could see, so if instead I did something where they stacked all in the left column and then jumped all the way back up to the right column, as opposed to going left, right, that could be kind of confusing for people. And then, there's the CSS grid lets you very easily move things all over the place, right? And that can be a big issue for people as well. Changing the order of the, changing the visual order versus the focus order, right?
Yep.
And so there's probably ways you can get around that a little bit, or not get around it, but assist people by, I'll say this, I don't even think it's a good idea. I was just looking, like, spitballing out loud, but like you can change the focus order of things with JavaScript. You can't do it with CSS. But that could be something, if a media, if your window size changes, something like that, could be something to look at. But in general, that's where you got to, like, step easily when you're thinking about changing the way something is, like, the order in which something is displayed versus the order that it shows up in the code, in the HTML.
So yeah, I go from Wave, use the keyboard to tab through to make sure tab order, bypass block is there, and focus indicators are there as well. Then I move on to the screen reader, so we don't have to do that now, but screen reader, very important. And we have links to those, I believe, those PDFs from DQ. If not, I'll get them to you. But
yeah,
screen readers are very, when I started using screen readers, it was very daunting for me, not being a screen reader user. But over time, you get down to the, you can use the shortcuts. The shortcuts help it's even more of a challenge on mobile when you're somebody like me and you're testing on, an app, and
Yeah.
you got to use what they call the rotor. If anybody's familiar with that. So screen reader users, the technology is there. VoiceOver has been having some issues, I guess, in the past month or two with something that I haven't really read into, which I probably should, be an accessibility person. So but yeah, I move right into the screen reader, and then after that, what I'm going to do is I'll scroll to the top here. I'm going to go right to the dev tools, and I'm going to look at this. So basically what we have here, this is another, this is in Firefox. I'll check for issues for contrast again to see if, okay, this says,
That's that same button we were looking at, right?
yeah.
The gradient, the button on top of the gradient.
Yeah. So, we got that. I'm gonna uncheck that and then come back here and do the keyboard. There's no keyboard issues, so I'll move right on to, and I mean, you could do all of them, but I'd rather go through one of, this is how I do it myself. So you have some text labels here. So headings must be labeled. What do you give me that issue for? So let's do this. Make sure that your headings have non-empty text content and are not hidden, such as with CSS display none or ARIA hidden equals true. Users of screen readers rely on headings to understand the structure and content of a document. So what it's saying is, what is the code on that? No, let's go to the inspector, Todd.
Yeah, so that has an SVG, which has its own sort of set of weird things going on.
Right.
Be interesting to get your opinion on this. But the text is inside the SVG with title elements, and what I think what Firefox is saying here is that's not good enough, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we can look at this. Let's jump over to Chrome.
Be curious if title elements get read in a title inside an SVG gets read. Probably not, I guess, according to what those tools are saying.
Oh, wow, shouldn't have done that.
Well, it's there, yeah. So the the SVG has a label, as an ARIA label, but it's like, does that stuff bubble up to the heading, text or not? So,
and I don't
have an interesting question.
Yeah, I don't have the tree view turned on either. So, yeah.
But I mean, I suppose I could move that. So if you saw that in that code, that the SVG element has the ARIA labeled by on it, which is pointing to the title element. But I suppose we could just move that up to the heading, up to the H1, and that probably could cover it as well.
Yep.
So we just want the word virtual coffee, for screen readers, and they don't need to know about the logo at all. I mean, the content is, the fact is it's virtual coffee, right? So that's the important information there. So
yeah. The best person I can direct you to, who has done a ton of workshops and talks on SVGs and accessible SVGs, is Carrie Fisher. And I don't offhand remember her site, so let's do this. Let's look her up because not that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Google searches. It's just carriefisher.com. She has one art. I mean, you spelled it right in the Google search, but I was like, oh, Carrie Fisher. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So she's done some good work with SVG.
Yep.
Accessibility. Nice. Those would be a good resource. I'm definitely marking that down, because that's one of those
And
areas where it's like, well, it's not, I mean, if it's just an image tag pointing at SVG, then you just treat it like an image. But once the markup is in the, you know, the SVG markup is inline, then all of a sudden there's a lot more things to think about. So
right.
I think this would be
And
a
she,
good.
yeah, and she does a great job of explaining it better than I could.
Nice.
So, you know, I've learned a little bit from, you know, I've seen her talks and been in her workshops, and you know, if anybody gets a chance and they're really interested in making things accessible and accessible SVGs, hitting her classes, her workshops, in her talks at conferences is highly recommended by me. So
Nice. So if you jump back to the accessibility tab we're looking at, you know, we're almost out of time. I just want to wrap up real quick, but this view here, so we're looking at text labels and the issues with text labels. And so we saw that heading one, these diagrams are probably, are they images with, I guess, oh, they're logos, I bet. So what's that first diagram one? That's empty. Where is it? So it's more SVGs, yeah. So it's like it's going to be the same thing of figuring out
yeah.
what should be the approach, and you know, obviously we need it because these are all inline, you know, SVGs that are like part of the HTML. So that'd be a cool thing to sort of check out. But this tool, and this is just built into Firefox DevTools. It's not an extra extension, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, and so there's just a tab right there for accessibility, and you know, you can get a lot of different things. The color contrast, I actually find it to be pretty useful here, just since it's built in, and you know, it's not adding a bunch of stuff. I spent a long time trying to get those with the gradient, like we're talking about at the top, the gradient and the text on top of the gradient. It took a long time to kind of get those nailed down as far as color contrast, and this tool helped, you know, help sort of follow those down. So it's a nice tool.
Yeah, it is. And just I'll go through these two that I really want to get to before we go.
Nice.
Is the simulator for visual disabilities is, you know, as you can see right here. So this is the site for somebody that can't see red. That's really interesting. To somebody that can't see green, and so on and so forth. So yeah.
And are there so the color contrast will help out pretty much people who suffer from anything that was on that list, right? You know, just as a baseline. Are there automated tools? I mean, it's good to check. Is there anything like specific that you want to look at aside from just a spot check with those, with each one of those selected? You know, are there like problem areas? I mean, if you're passing the contrast, like let's say you're passing the contrast, you know, the contrast guidelines that you set up. After that, are there, you know, specific trouble spots that automated tools don't pick up, you know, for different color related disabilities, or is it just kind of a good idea to do a glance through those simulators and, you know, just make sure everything is at least, you know, readable?
It's a good idea to use the tool that I just used, which is one of the tools that's out there. The other one is the site whocanuse.com, and that will give you a list of, you know, these visual deficiencies here, and you know, it will show you an example according to, you know, your, and this does, this does, I believe it only does hex color. You can only do hex colors in there, but you can move the sliders for HGB. So but it's a really good tool. You know,
that's kind of cool.
It simulates direct sunlight in night mode. So
yeah,
I mean, it is great.
The night shift. That's I've often wondered about that. Like when it kicks on my phone, like do all my sites look like garbage when this is turned on? You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing. So that's cool that there's a you know, like a little simulator for that. That's neat.
Yeah, and there's some other tools as well that off the top of my head. I'd have to go through my bookmarks, but we don't have enough time for me to fish through those. But and the last one being with this, you can see what the tab order is as far as the site goes. So this is, of course, going to be that sticky menu, that sticky header. But then after that, and then, and just real quick, I will do the Axe tools last because, I've come across a few false positives with this as well. So if we go through this, it's going to come up with that number and it's going to give you this list right here. It's a very good tool. Don't get me wrong. It's in my arsenal. It gives you, the ability to highlight. So let's do something like this. So, it gives you to highlight the problem and what it covers, which is 143 right here. And just, where the code, where it's happening in the code, what the issue is, and how can you fix it. So, that's just a little bit of what I use.
So our other tools were not picking up these nav links, for color contrast. And so I was just wondering if you know why, or like if you have an idea why in your head of, or are they just like is X the default at a higher standard? Is it like the AAA instead of the AA or something, or, are they using different metrics to like measure that?
Well,
it's just interesting,
Yeah, they are, it seems a little more tight with the guidelines and what passes and fails.
Okay.
As far as color contrast checkers go, though, either the number is rounded up or rounded down, and it depends on which color you use.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So again, there's that, could go one way, could go the other way with color contrast checker as well.
Yeah. No, that's good to know. And so you kind of use it as a guide, but don't have to, I don't know.
Yeah, which is why
everything down, down the road of,
yeah. And which is why I use 3 to 4 color contrast checkers. And then I can say, okay, well, they're falling within this baseline right here or whatever. So, I think the most effective one is, let's see if I can pull it up here. Not that one. Right there. Contrastchecker.com. That's the WCAG one. I think that's the most reliable, to be honest with you. So
nice. So this is like you're sticking in. This isn't scanning a site. Maybe you're sticking in.
Yeah.
Specific choices. Yeah. Nice.
Yep. Grayscale. They don't have all the bells and whistles as some of these other things I've shown you it does, but
right. But you can at least do double check on a specific combination. That's really cool.
And one last thing too is if you look at a site and you want to look at it with somebody with as somebody with a visual deficiency, do the squint test. I think we talked about the squint test too, maybe on the podcast, or that might have been somewhere else.
Definitely. But no, we definitely did.
Yeah. Okay. So just the squint test. Go, squint at what you're looking at, and if you can see it, great. If not, you got to do some work on it.
I love that. Yep. Or in my case, take my contacts out and try to navigate the site. That's when I'll be going at the 4,000 magnification to be able to do it. So, all right. Well, that was great, Todd. I appreciate you jumping on this on the stream. We have a bunch of I don't know, a bunch of issues, I think that we're going to be able to create out of this. And I know that you have some more, some more things that we didn't even have time to touch. So there's always work to be done, Todd, real quick, do you want to share where people can find you on the internet?
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter talking about accessibility and lobster rolls, often at Todd Libby. TODDLIBBY. is my handle. I have been so busy doing work and everything and preparing for conference talks that I haven't been writing a lot lately, but this let's see what else. I'm on Polywork. I think that's at Cola Bottles, which is my alt nickname.
Nice.
And you can find me online at either of those handles.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like I
and
said,
on Virtual Coffee.
and on Virtual Coffee. That's right. That's right. And like I said earlier, this turned into Todd Week somehow, but we have, the stream. We just released the newest episode of Virtual Coffee podcast, which we had Todd on, and on Friday, Todd's doing a lunch and learn with us. So check us out on virtualcoffee.io. You can find links to all of those things. We have, Travis. Oh, wait, we have one question. Travis says, I need Todd to audit the restaurants in Atlanta that make lobster rolls. The nearest place to me charges $40 for one, which either means it's a scam or it's the best thing ever. So, Travis, if you buy a plane ticket, I'm sure Todd will come down to Atlanta and try them all out with you.
I'll be in New Orleans in November. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thanks again, Todd. And thanks everybody for coming. And, subscribe to our, Twitch. I think we're going to start streaming some things a little more regularly here. So feel free to hit subscribe there. And otherwise, check us out on virtualcoffee.io and have a good Tuesday. And we'll see everybody later. All right. Bye.
Bye.